Hey, friend. Welcome back to Shutdown Not Shaken, a special mini-series of the At Ease podcast. I am your host, Kristen Candace, and in 2018, the longest government shutdown, at least so far in U.S. history, left hundreds of thousands of federal workers in limbo, uncertain about paychecks, stability, and even purpose. For some, it was just a pause, and for others, it became a pivot. My guest today, Dr. Jeanette Davis, knows that story well. A marine microbiologist, author, and science communicator, she experienced that shutdown firsthand. She used that season to redefine what was next, ultimately finding a way to align her career with her purpose. In this conversation, we discuss what it really feels like to have your professional world put on hold, how to navigate the emotional and financial strain that comes with it, and what it takes to turn disruption into direction. If you're a Black woman in federal service, wondering what's on the other side of uncertainty, this episode is for you. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Dr. Jeanette Davis, also known as Dr. Ocean. Would you like to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. I'm a marine microbiologist. Fancy way of saying I study bacteria in the ocean, which are really important. Every other breath that you take, you can thank the bacteria in the ocean for producing oxygen. So I love me some microbes of the sea. And I'm also a children's science book author and a professor.
Nice. Nice. I'm really happy to have you here because you are also a former federal employee
Yes,
who
I
has
am.
been through a shutdown, the longest shutdown to date. That
Yes.
remains to be seen if this shutdown is going to outlive the last. But what do you remember from the 2018 shutdown? Not just like the logistics of it, but just how you felt and how it made you feel about your work and your future.
Yeah, it was definitely a feeling of despair. For me, I literally had just bought a house. I closed on my house maybe a few weeks before the shutdown, and I get into my house and I'm excited and I have this feeling obviously of accomplishment like yes, I did all this schooling, I finally have my good government job and I just purchased a home in DC. I'm excited. And then literally a few weeks later, the government gets shut down. And so I just remember this feeling of like utter devastation. Like, wait, I did everything right. I secured a really good job. And, how is this happening to me? Uh, and others, right? It's just not something that I would have ever thought about happening, particularly, during that time of my life. So I remember feeling just like despair, a bit of like just questioning, like, did I do it right? Or maybe I should have held out on buying this house or, just a lot of like questioning and trying to figure things out.
Which is completely
Yes.
understandable. Completely understandable. So, definitely a lot of questioning, and I would imagine, feeling like a lack of security as a federal employee. But did you have any realizations during that time, or did you start thinking differently about your purpose or your long-term career goals?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that at one point I even thought about I looked into like filing for unemployment, right? Because I was talking to a lot of federal workers at the time who were talking about like filing for unemployment or just ways of getting some income. And I happened to join this really awesome group on Facebook called like furlough. It was a furlough group. And I just remember people in that group, we would like send each other encouraging words and just funny memes and just kind of helping each other get through day by day. And what kept coming up was, people selling things, leaning into their gifts, talents, and creativity. And I thought to do the same. Prior to the furlough, I had actually written a series of children's science books. I went through this really amazing program, Momentum Education, and out of that came a lot of creative aspects around science that I always wanted to pursue, but I would never really say out loud. And a part of that kind of journey was going through this process of doing children's literature. And when the government shutdown came and I started looking at how others were leaning into creativity, I thought about my children's science books again. And so it really did help me kind of redefine who I am as a scientist. I thought to myself, and I remember saying this, like, I'm way too talented to have one stream of income. Like, what was I thinking? Like, I remember saying that to myself. It was like so loud, that thought. Like, why was I only depending on this government job? Like, what other talents and gifts do I have? What am I sitting on that I haven't been using up until then? So I went back to my children's science books and believe it or not, like maybe everything kind of happened in parallel because I closed in November. The month before in October, I was at another event where I met a publisher and said to her, like, oh, let's, connect. And I have these books. And then by the time January hit, or in this December going into January, I start getting those things together and reached out to her. And it was history from there. We've published 3 or 4 books since. And so again, it really helped me redefine my purpose, but in particular, lean more into like creative aspects of who I am as a scientist.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about that was 2018, 2019, and how that time gave you space for what did shift moving forward? Can we talk about that? Like what has changed since that time that you had
Yeah.
to get creative?
For me, I think fundamentally what I learned about myself as a scientist is, you know, I think science is the technical aspect of me and my skill set, but my vision is to create a sense of like belonging in the world and to create community and empowering people to make like sound decisions about their environment around them. And I think that there are so many ways of doing that. And I thought to myself, as a Black woman in science growing up, I didn't see representation. And so I thought one aspect of that was to be able to create representation in children's literature. But from that came speaking engagements and consulting and all of these other ways that I can create community around inclusivity in science, right? And so since 2018 up until present day, I've of course continued to write children's literature. I've done lots of consulting, everything from startup companies to help combat climate change to big screen films like Black Panther Wakanda Forever and, helping out with the ocean scenes there. And the more that I was doing that in government, I realized, you know what? Government actually is not a good fit for me anyway, right? It was great for the time. I learned a lot. I do think that, you know, I am really connected to advocacy and policy, which I learned a lot in government and I was able to exercise a lot in government. But I thought to myself, what would be the best way for me to be all of who I am? Because, when I'm Dr. Jeanette Davis in federal government, I have to adhere to very specific rules, as you know, and be compliant. And sometimes those ideas are not aligned with my core values, right? Like, I often am non-compliant with my thinking and more inclusive and more broad than, some of the things that you have to do in government, in particular being someone in policy.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I kept taking all these tests that would say I'm non-compliant, yet I was in policy. So eventually I said to myself, it's not just the children's literature or the creativity. Where is the space where I can be myself and fully contribute to community and science? And so I thought that was academia. And so after the government shutdown, I continued to do more, but then question what would be a good fit. And eventually I start getting into grant writing more. And reviewing grants. At that point, I'm helping to form what grants are and how federal government funds them. And I was like, wow, this is a really great tool. Like I know all the ins and out of grants. I should be writing them and getting them to pursue the things that I want to do in science. So long story short, I eventually transitioned out of government. And now I am a tenure track assistant professor at Hampton University. Even that was strategic because I could have went to a lot of different universities, but being at an HBCU was important to me, and particularly being at an HBCU where I discovered my love for the ocean. I always say if it wasn't for Hampton University and the marine science department there, I wouldn't be an ocean scientist. I think I would definitely be in science, but not ocean science. I had to go there to know that it existed, and that's something that I wanted to, showcase and also provide for others.
Wow. Wow. So you talked about the steps, like what steps you took. Can you talk about some of the emotional work
Ooh.
that you had to do during the shutdown, during your transition? Because I know you've done a lot
Yes.
of work. And I think sometimes that's where a lot of us really struggle to tap into our emotions. So can you share a little bit about that journey?
Yes, great question. So I'll start by saying I have been in therapy for 7 consecutive years. So lots of healing, lots of worthiness work. Because even the thought of creating children's literature, I am someone who is, I set a goal, I go achieve it.
Yeah.
However, to be present to the voids, or like the gap or the void that I want to feel in the world is a different story. So it wasn't just like creating the literature or doing the things or whatever that was. It was a literally a worthiness conversation and a conversation around vulnerability and being seen. For an example, I wasn't even on social media. Like I was someone doing all the stuff in the ocean and like didn't want nobody to know. It was just me, my family and my friends, right? I didn't even want to be seen. So even taking the step to one acknowledge who I am, um as a person, as a creative, as a scientist outside of survival. Because for so much of my journey, it's been like, well, I don't want to be where I came from. I'm going to work hard to make sure I don't have to go back to certain situations. But to be in a place where it's like, well, we're not running from anything anymore. We are creating from a place of love, not from a place of fear. That took a lot of healing, a lot of worthiness work. It took a lot of letting go of a certain identity and even mourning the person who I thought I was and embracing the becoming of who I am and who I will grow into be. It was, yes, it was a lot of healing, a lot of crying, a lot of shedding, letting go, literally a lot of movement. Like
Mm.
even the journey of literally picking up and moving, right? Like, I don't belong here anymore. Where am I safe? Redefining safety. Like, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And in terms of emotions, again, they ranged. I would say grief is a big one of like, again, I am a person who sets a goal, I will accomplish it. So, who am I? That goal no longer suits me, right? Like, who am I to, like, oh man, I thought I wanted this thing and I got it. And it's like, but I'm not satisfied. Like, is there something more? To like mourn the loss of the things that you think you wanted and you realize actually there's something bigger or more. And something that, and I said this to you and some friends like not too long ago, I actually stopped writing goals for myself. And I even that was like, what? But you're a person who writes all the goals. And it's like, no, who do I need to be to have my life turn out? So it's no longer about I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be love. I'm going to be soft. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be abundance. And then when I started living into those things, everything start coming. I always get the question like, "Oh, did you audition for this thing? Did you seek this thing?" No. I was somewhere being visible, and that's what I had to learn to do, to, like, be seen and accept all that comes with being seen. It's a lot of bad things that come with being seen, girl, we know.
Mhm.
But there's a lot
Yeah.
of joy and abundance and vulnerability and accessibility. Like, how can Marvel find Dr. Ocean if she's not willing to be seen? And that took a lot of healing to get there.
Yes, girl. That the being, right? And I think that's the part that's so important. I was talking to the boys today because I'm teaching a Zumba class and they're like, "Why are you
Yes.
teaching Zumba?" I was like, "Cuz I'm going to be joyful." And
Yes.
they're like, "Be joyful." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yeah, people
Be
need
joy.
joy right now, right?" And so the way for to help others experience joy is for me to be joyful myself. And so we're
Yes.
literally just having that conversation about being.
Yes.
Mm.
I love that you're teaching them that, by the way.
Thank you. I'm trying. I try to have like real conversations with them about
Mhm.
what's going on in the world. We talked about in that conversation today, we talked about like people losing their SNAP benefits. I had to explain what SNAP was and all this stuff. And I started with asking them a question, like if you have a job and you have money, would you would you give a little bit of your money to someone who may not have the things that you have, right? They
Mm.
might need food, they might need care. And they were like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd do
Yeah.
that," because whenever they have a snack, I always take taxes from them, right? Like, I'm like, give me 2 little crackers," that's how taxes work, so I was like, "That's what taxes do."
Yeah.
Right? And they know that the government is shut down, and so I explained to them, because the government is shut down,
Yeah.
people are not going to receive these benefits. So I can't feed everybody, right? But what I
Yeah.
can do is just bring a little bit of joy, and so we had that
Yes. I love
conversation, and it
that.
just I think it's important for them to be, not fearful, but just aware of what's going on in
Yes.
the world. Even at 7, they understand, and it helps put things into perspective for them, and my hope is that I'm helping them figure out who they need to be. 'Cause whether they realize it or not, they're going to school with people who are losing their SNAP benefits. They're in school
Yeah.
with people whose parents are impacted in ways that we can't even imagine from the government shutdown.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. How would you so I wanna ask, just how would you, looking back at that shutdown in 2018, how do you see it now? Do you see it as
Mm.
a crisis, a catalyst, or maybe both?
I would definitely say both. It was definitely a crisis, again, just because of all things considered. Like, you buy a home and, like, I'm getting hit with the most amount of month like, bills that I've ever had, right? Because I'm just moving in, so there's, like, not just the utilities, but getting the utilities turned on and, like, all the fees that come with that and the literally moving fees, and then you have your mortgage cut, all these things. So, I definitely looked at it as a crisis at the time. Initially, I remember talking to my therapist about this, and she asked me about savings and things like that, and she knows me. She's like, "Jeanette, I know you have savings, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but" and she's like, "Yeah, that's the thing about savings. We have them and we save it and we hope to never use it, but the truth is sometimes we have to actually use them, and that's what savings are for." So, like, again, even that, like, letting go of that identity, because I realized, like, again, so much of that was connected to survival mode coming up, where like you didn't always know where the next paycheck was coming from, or like what things would look like, right? And so it's like always having something, like, but you never really want to use the something. So anyway, I definitely looked at it as a crisis initially, and then after just doing the work, thinking like, yeah, I've prepared for a time such as this. I don't want to believe that I have to go through this, but there are some things that I've done in life that have prepared me for a time such as this. And if I can remove this concept of, well, it's not fair, because no, it's not fair. Life is not fair. And if I can get over the like, but I did everything right, how can this happen to me? Like, well, because you belong to humanity and things happen, bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people, all of it, right? Like we're all a part of humanity. So once I kind of removed that, then it definitely obviously was a catalyst for what's next. Like fundamentally asking myself, who am I and what do I want? And why is it that a job is the center of so much when it should not be, right? How can I create in a world that does not hinge on whether the government is open or not? And so I definitely see it as a catalyst. And I will also even say having that conversation with my therapist and looking at what I was able to do, even that was a privilege. Even that was a privilege that at that time I didn't even understand. And there's so many who are not may not have that privilege to say like, well, I have savings or I can invest in this way or pivot and this way. And so I think fundamentally, because I think it's one thing to say, like, this is what I did and these are the steps, but I also recognize that everyone may not be in that situation. But I do think it's an opportunity for everyone to fundamentally look at what they want in life. And this concept, this dream, this conditioning that we've all been sold and told that, like, you get the good job and everything works out is a lie. It's just a lie. It's a lie, and so while everyone may not have the same privileges, I do think it's an opportunity for us all to assess the lies that we've been told about security and being able to redefine what security looks like for ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
girl.
That the doing everything right part just really it always sticks with me.
Mhm.
I think about when I realized that 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 right didn't matter,
Yep,
and how heartbreaking that is the first time around when you
yep,
think, because you've followed certain steps that you can
yep,
guarantee an outcome. And it's like I talked about this early on in the podcast, you can control process, but you can't control outcomes.
yep,
And just how often we see that show up, whether it's in jobs or relationships
yep,
or shoot, even, I don't talk about bodies as much as I used to, but when in teaching group fitness, being a health coach
yeah,
and people wanting to control their bodies and control what their
yes,
bodies look like and thinking if I do X, I will achieve this and being
exactly.
devastated when they can't or, when they aren't able to achieve that. And like you said, redefining because all of it is attached to security in some way, shape, or form. It might not all be financial security,
Yes,
but it is all it comes down to us trying to keep ourselves safe.
exactly. I think that's a really great point. Essentially, that's what I mean about security and safety.
Yeah.
For me, it was obviously during that time it's financial, but it really is like what is fulfilling and rewarding and stimulating and purposeful for me. You know, not to say that my job was not, but in ways it was not, right? Because again, I was so connected to, well, I said I wanted to, advise the White House, but I didn't think there would be certain types of personalities in the White House. I was inspired under the first Black president. I had all these things to look forward to. And so, yeah, just being able to go back and say, like, it's okay to have some caveats. It's okay be like take a step back and not be so connected to the outcome that you don't have that space or room to just renegotiate. Like what is meaningful to you at this stage, all things considered. And I had learned the tools of policy and advocacy and I was grateful for that. And I'm sitting there in the office of policy, but I'm like, I think I've learned enough to shift policy. I don't need to be compliant with it.
Yeah, we get to change our minds,
Yes.
renegotiate and change our minds. There's something you said about the job being the center of your world.
Mm.
What would you say is the center of your world now?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, joy, joy for sure. I want to In one aspect, leaning into what is joyful and feels just good to my nervous system. Like, I have always been an intuitive person, but now I listen more to that
Mm.
intuition. I listen more to my body, and I've learned to stop second guessing what I feel. And I think that, feelings absolutely, especially as a scientist, I recognize feelings are not facts, but they are great data. And so I started to lead more with joy and fulfillment and following in that direction in terms of not just my career, not just professionally, but also personally. I started listening to what drains me and what doesn't. I remember, I think we had this conversation before, but when I was in government, I would wake up some days, actually, it was a long stretch of days where I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And I started thinking to myself, I said, I'm tired. Let me break that down. I am tired. But Jeanette, you've rested. You had sleep. You ate well. You exercised. Like you did all the things to not be tired in your body. So maybe that's a different data point. It's not a physical tired. There's an exhaustion. And I've learned that I tend to be really exhausted and burnt out when I'm in spaces that don't support who I am. So I would say joy has been the center, and not that all days are joyful or joyous or I'm always happy or there are no hardships and challenges. It means that I have fundamentally learned to choose joy on this journey. I've learned to choose it. I've learned to lean into it. Gratitude is a huge part of my life. And I think I access joy most often by being grateful for what I have. Again, going to the government shutdown, I I had some savings. That is a blessing. That is something to be grateful for, right? Instead of thinking of like, oh my God, I got to use this thing and I wasn't planning. It's like, no, you have something. Be grateful because that gratitude leads to the joy and leads to the next best thing for you to do. So, yeah, I would say joy, community, huge part of my life. And community is like not just my family and friends, but the people I work with. If I was reading this one study that talked about how much time you spend at work and with people at work. And there's one school of thought that's like, I just come here to get a paycheck. Y'all don't have to be my friends. And I understand that. But if I'm spending the bulk of my time with people, I want to like them. I do. Just saying.
Yeah.
We ain't got to be best friends, but I want to be in environments where people are likable. So
Wow.
community is also a huge part of my life.
Nice.
Yeah.
You said that you are exhausted when you're in spaces that don't support who you are. I imagine there are a lot of us, there are people listening to this who are currently operating in spaces that don't support who we are.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for those women who are in those spaces?
Yeah. I think the first thing is being curious about who you are. I think I was able to know I was in a space that didn't support me because going back to your question around the emotions and the work, I was doing a lot of self evaluation and self reflection and gaining lots of self awareness. And I think the first step is who are you and what you want? I think they are probably some of the most powerful questions you'll ever ask yourself in life, and be willing to accept what comes up and also shift with how things change. But I think, yeah, the first step is like, what do you actually want? And be honest with yourself about that. Because I think if you're honest with yourself about that, it makes the next steps easier to transition out of places that don't support you into places that do support you, right? If you are someone, and I'm just going to be honest, if you are someone who, values a certain lifestyle and your career that you've chosen or whatever affords you that lifestyle and that gives you the vacations that allows you to relax and turn off when you want to, and that's satisfying, that's okay. That is okay. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach. But for me, I love science and I want to do science, and I don't want to be in spaces where people fundamentally question if I can do science when I have all the credentials that say I can do science. That's just me. So, again, step one, be honest about what you actually want and be willing to then ask for it. I think that is the key. Ask for it. And sometimes in the current spaces or positions that we're in, we may not have what we want because we never asked for it. And I think
Mhm.
this concept of like, well, I work hard, don't they see? No, they don't. Especially if you're a Black woman, you're just expected to be superwoman, right? And so being honest about that and renegotiating those terms. If you want certain things in your spaces, request them. Ask for the support. Distinction, support is what you request. Help is what people give you, what they think you need. And you might not need that help. You need support. So it's going to take a willingness to lean into what you want and being able to ask for that support, whether it's colleagues, a boss, friends, family, or whatever that looks like. Once I learned to ask for the support, I stopped feeling less exhausted. And okay, this is the third step I would say, because I'm saying once I learned to ask for the support, and then also once I made the distinction between, well, some things I don't need to ask for permission, I just need to do them. That was the game changer for me. Some things, yes, if it is support that you need, you ask. Some things you need to just go do and have some agency over what you actually want. You don't have to wait for people to give it to you. Once I learned certain things in government, I never asked, could I do? No, I just took the time off and I did what I needed to do. That's it. I don't need to ask for certain things. I don't need to ask for permission to do great things. I could just go do great things. If you find that you're in spaces where you want to do something great, but you got to ask, to me, that's a sign of like, that might be a sign to pivot somewhere else because you should be supported to just be great, even if you're your own cheerleader. I think that's okay.
Love that. Love that. Um, okay. Last question.
Yes.
For Black women who are in federal service, or maybe they've recently been laid off, maybe they've been riffed, or, there's so many layoffs going around, who are currently in crisis. They can't see yet that this could be a catalyst. How did you advise Jeanette 7 years ago when she was in crisis?
Ooh. Um, the first thing is let people love you. Let people love on you because I know that even in crisis, there are people who want to hug you. And it might seem like something small, but you need it at this time. You absolutely need it at this time. If it's a friend that you just need to talk to, I would say definitely, I say all that to say lean on community, whether that is a phone call, whether that's a accountability partner, whether that is other employees that are furloughed. When I was furloughed in DC at the time, there were restaurants doing things for federal workers. I went to all the stuff. Yes, I did it. I went to all the things. Y'all had food, I went, and what was beautiful about it was not necessarily just the, like, whether you got food or a drink or whatever, it was community. I was finding all of these other people who were experiencing what I was experiencing, so the first thing in crisis is to, like, know that you're not alone and lean on the other people who are going through it with you, because you are going to be each other's support system. You are going to be able to, with each other, choose gratitude and joy and come up with creative ideas. So, whether that's joining the Facebook furlough group, going to the local things that's in your community around federal employees, those things were like the highlight of my days.
Mm,
I looked forward to, like, what my furlough group doing today? What so and so bake? Or what jeans she put together? What outfit? Because she wanted to be a stylist. How she style her home today? Like,
yeah.
those were the things that kind of gave me the momentum to, like, keep my spirits up. So I would say let people love on you, and love looks different. So allow people to do that. Find your community and be honest. I encourage people to, and I did this, I wrote things down when I said, like, man, I'm too, like, talented and, like, smart and educated and all these things, right? To, like, just be sitting here. What do I want to do? And I wrote those things down, and literally on my list was a professor. I remember saying that, like, and I remember talking to me and my dad were talking about it. And I said, yeah, I could be a professor. And he was like, really? And then that actually was the first time, like, I knew that I could do that, but it was the first time that I thought about it. And now today I'm a professor. But write those things down. There's so much data that shows when you write things down and you're intentional about it, how likely it is to happen. So, again, let people love on you, find your community, be honest, and write down what you want and start working towards it. And ask for the support to do it. Literally, ask for the support to do it. You could know people who can make things work. That's how it happened with my books. I went to an event, someone invited me, and then I met the right person. It's hard, and it can also be fulfilling and rewarding. It really can. Both are true.
Yeah. It's hard and we can do hard things.
And we can do hard things.
Yeah.
And we have.
Yeah.
That was another thing. When I looked at my life, it was like, is this the thing that's gonna take me out?
Right.
It's not,
Right.
because it's if something was gonna take me out, it would have been something else. It's not
Yeah.
gonna be this.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be this.
You've survived 100% of your hard days.
Yes, 100% of your I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. And it makes the great days or the joyous days even sweeter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Ocean, for joining me
You're
today. I really
welcome.
hope that your experience and your journey is going to bless somebody and empower them in this season. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I hope you have an awesome day. Um, oh, can you tell people where they can follow you and where they can get your books?
Yes. So I am on social media as Dr. Ocean, Dr. underscore Ocean. So you can find me there. You can find more about my journey and my children's science books on my website at www.dr, just dr, ocean.science. So drocean.science. And they're also available online where all books are sold. It's Science is Everywhere, Science is for Everyone, Jada's Journey Under the Sea, and Color with Me Under the Sea.
Yeah.
And some of them are also in Spanish. They're right here behind me.
Yes. And I'll make sure we include all of that in the show notes. If today's episode spoke to you, if it made you pause, breathe, or feel just a little more seen, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. We're working to build community through these conversations, one story at a time, and your share helps this message reach more people who could use a little ease right now. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, take a second to leave a 5-star review and a few words about what resonated with you. It really helps others find the show and join our circle. Until next time, take care of yourself, give yourself grace, and remember, you are allowed to feel at ease, even in uncertain times. And if the government is still shut down, I will see you tomorrow.